Hello, everyone. My name is Kerri Wade. Welcome to this special Zoom meeting that we're doing today. I thought I'd just change things up a little bit and see if we can't move the conversation back to our normal lives instead of just COVID-19, because I think probably we're all a little bit tired of hearing about COVID-19. So I asked my friend Jennifer Douglas, who owns East Valley Thermography, to come and join me today on this Zoom to just give us a little more information about thermography. I know in the people that I've talked with, a lot of people don't even know about this option. They don't even know what it is. And I'm telling you, if I've had it done personally, and it is amazing technology. And Jennifer has the top line equipment. She's very knowledgeable about it. And I just wanted her to share a little bit about this. And I think we'll just talk mostly about breast exams or breast thermography. It can be done on the whole body, so it's not just limited to that. But I think this is a really great topic that a lot of my people would like to hear. So, Jennifer, let's let you just
Hello.
take over and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to thermography. How did that even come about?
Well, I think as with a lot of people, they come to their path in life by life's experiences. So that is my case. In 2014, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, which is the most common form of breast cancer. Took me completely by surprise because I was a healthy eater, exerciser, but there are things beyond our control sometimes. And some of the things I was doing probably weren't the best things either, come to find out later on down the road. But long story short, after I got through my surgery, my radiation therapy, and oral chemo, which I actually cut short, I decided that I really needed to reduce my radiation exposure. And I don't think most people understand the harmful effects of radiation. And I think we'll talk about that today as well. But that's my story. So I started doing a lot of research. I'm a researcher by nature. If I'm going to put new tires on my car, I research the tires good for my car. It's just what I do. So that's how I got to finding out about thermography and started having my own scans done, and just felt like more people needed to know about this. This is not a new technology. It's been around for 30-something years, and it's used a great deal in other countries. Not as much here on the clinical sense as it is in other countries yet.
That's fascinating. So, what exactly is thermography and how is it different than our normal mammograms? And, what are they, radiology or whatever they use? I don't even know what technology it is. So,
So mammogram is an X-ray.
Okay.
So it's, again, radiation exposure. So let me just kind of tell you what thermography is. The short answer or the quick answer here, it's really a different kind of diagnostic tool. And it differs in a couple of different ways from conventional diagnostics. And the first way is that it uses no radiation. There's no tissue compression, there's no pain, there's no touch whatsoever. Secondly, it images physiology instead of anatomy. So function of the body instead of structure. And I think its true ability comes into, or it's where it shines is its ability to detect changes to the vascular, neurological, and musculoskeletal systems over a period of time by seeing changes to the thermal patterns which are produced from inflammation within the body. So that's sort of the short answer of what thermography is. And I think most people today probably know that, excuse me, inflammation is at the root of most disease processes, whether it be cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune dysfunction, etc. But thermography's ability to detect even minute changes to the thermal patterns really, in my estimation, make this an ideal early detection tool.
And by early detection tool, what is the difference? I mean, can this really detect cancers and stuff before the typical mammography or even,
Um,
self-exam?
Years before in many cases. So when we get to the breast images that I have prepared to just kind of show our audience what we're talking about, I do have a chart that kind of outlays that. And that's part of what I wanted to touch on today, is that there's something called the breast cancer cell doubling rate. And there is a body of research on this, and it's been found, scholarly research, that breast cancer cells double about every 90 days in a woman average age 50. So every 90 days may not sound like a rapid growth to most people, but I think if you consider that 2 cells become 4, 4 becomes 16, and 16 becomes 256, that is a rapid growth. Um, Unfortunately, by the time a mammogram can detect this tumor, it's usually a little over 4 billion cells in size. And that means that the host has had that cancer, that tumor, for 8 to 10 years by that time. Thermography has the ability, because we're not imaging structure, we're not looking for a solid tumor, we're looking for the process behind that, which is the angiogenesis. And that is the blood vessel formation of a tumor to sustain itself, its nutrition line, if you will. And that is what we're looking for in most types of breast cancer. Inflammatory breast cancer is a little bit different, and I'll talk about that when we get to the images. But yeah, that's,
Wow.
thermography can actually detect a breast disease tumor when we're in the early stages, so 256 cells, and about, up to year 2. So between 0 and 2 years, we can detect a tumor forming.
Wow. Instead of it sitting there for 10 years and not having any clue that that's even here and growing in your
Correct.
body, that's a pretty key element there, I would say. That's a big one.
Well, and that's again why it's really an early detection tool, because if you can catch this much earlier in the game, before the disease proliferates outside of a milk duct or spreads to other organs or the lymph system, you've got a lot more options in terms of treatments and survivability, to be quite honest.
Wow, that's amazing. I know my mother is a breast cancer survivor also, and hers did spread to her lymph nodes. And that is something that causes issues for the rest of your life. She's always having issues with the lymph nodes and swelling and that sort of thing. So that's really big. And when you can get it when it's that small, where it's just beginning, I mean, it's a whole game changer to somebody's quality of life. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Let me let you
And
just,
I don't
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think most people know what the lymph system even is. They know they have lymph nodes. You have several lymph nodes throughout your body, but they are really like second to your liver. They remove toxins from your body. So if that your lymph system is congested, which we see very frequently on breast imaging, or not functioning properly, or it's been attacked by the proliferation of cancer, you're in dire straits many times. There's depending upon how long it's been in your lymph system, tracking and moving throughout your body, the prognosis typically is not good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know, and even with like my mom, she broke her arm here a few years back, and it was the same side as where she had had her lymph nodes removed from the cancer, and that was the worst part of her arm break, really, because that part went on for months. She had problems with that, and so it is a big deal. It really is, and we may not think that it's that big of a deal. Just a simple arm break can be completely altered and changed by that because of the past history of that. Whereas if she could have caught that earlier, it may not have gone that far and, not have those issues down the road. So I hope she doesn't mind me sharing all of this. There's no
Correct.
HIPAA here, right? Okay, well, let's see what you've got. I know you've got some slides and pictures to show because I think most of us, me anyway, I'm very visual and I
Yeah.
like to see. So.
Well, before I start that, I just want to say that regardless of whether we're imaging breasts or full body or parts of the body. What we're looking for in thermography is symmetry between like sides of the body. So in other words, left and right sides of the body, left breast, right breast should look very similar in nature. And so when we see things that are not symmetrical, those are typically indicative of one of three things: disease, dysfunction, or injury. And so with breast imaging, we have a little bit further complication with hormonal changes. And as I mentioned earlier, the breast cancer cell doubling rate. So with breast imaging, really we want to establish a woman's normal baseline. And that is established by doing 2 imagings 3 months apart. From there on, we have something to compare all future breast imagings to. And so if the patterns change, then we know something's happening. Excuse me. So further on thermal patterns, everybody has a unique thermal pattern, and it should never change over their lifetime. So again, when we see changes to those patterns, we know that it's indicative of one of those 3 things: disease, dysfunction, or injury. So let me see if I can share my screen with you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
No, no, I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, so this image is a normal breast imaging scan. Again, we're looking for symmetry. Left and right sides look pretty much the same. The thermal patterns are pretty similar. And the temperature differentials within those patterns, which is kind of the geeky side of it, are stable as well. So that is a normal breast imaging.
Okay.
The second one is
Oh, wow.
fibrocystic breast disease. Now, they've tried to start dropping disease from that because people were getting freaked out, and kind of rightfully so. But this is fibrocystic breast tissue, which is extremely common. And just as dense breast tissue is extremely common, particularly in younger women, but it's lumpy bumpy. And this image kind of infers that. Keep in mind, these are a little pixelated because of how big they're blown up, but this is not cancerous. However, lumps and bumps may prevent mammography from detecting a tumor that's being hidden by one of these lumps and bumps. So it is a concern and should be followed closely. And a lot of times dietary changes can change this. So keep that in mind. This image is what's called invasive ductal carcinoma, which is what I had and is the most common form of breast cancer. In the area of the circle, you see both the tumor and the blood supply for that tumor. So where the blue arrow is pointing is the center of the tumor. It's a cooler hypothermic area. And around that is, you see the red area and the white pixels. That is the tumor creating a blood supply for itself, or its nutrition line. And that process is called angiogenesis. This is actually an image of a 37-year-old woman who had no family history of breast cancer. She had a biopsy and it revealed a 2-centimeter tumor. She unfortunately did not survive this cancer because it was seen too late, and she died 12 months after her diagnosis. So,
Goodness.
37 years old.
I was going to ask on that image, how do we know, can you tell me like how far along that particular cancer was? I mean, this is probably
This
not
is advanced
early. So it's
because she, yeah, I don't know her history, if she had any mammograms prior. I don't think she had any thermograms prior, but I don't think she may not have had any mammograms either. I don't know. But again, mammography is probably not going to pick up a tumor of this size, you know, at least 8 years into the development. So
Okay.
scary.
Yes.
And this is inflammatory breast cancer, or IBC as it's typically called in the medical community. This is an extremely aggressive form of cancer and typically deadly. It moves very fast. It is a rare cancer, but because it's so aggressive and the way it looks, and there's no solid tumor with this, it's all inflammatory. Mammography cannot pick it up. So you cannot detect
Wow.
inflammatory breast cancer with mammography because there is nothing solid for the X-ray beams to bounce off of. It's also typically misdiagnosed as mastitis, which is, it's really inflammation of the breast tissue and sometimes caused by an inflammation. But because of misdiagnosis, you've lost some time in treating it. And that's why it is so deadly. And interestingly, thermography can detect inflammatory breast cancer or breast disease months before the patient even shows outward symptoms. So before the skin looks bruised, red, itching, the other symptoms along with this sometimes are skin dimpling of the breast tissue, inverted nipples, crusty nipples, things of that nature. So again, early detection is key for all things, but particularly for breast disease.
Wow.
I wanted to be sure to mention male breast cancer because more men die of breast cancer than women proportionally because they typically don't seek medical attention early enough in the process. You know, men, they just don't want to go to the doctor. So,
And some of us women.
what's that?
And some of us women.
Yeah, some women too. But they put it off, or they just brush it off as nothing. And then this is a male breast cancer. The area in the circle is actually the tumor. You wouldn't probably know that. The physicians that interpret my images are world-class physicians. They're board certified medical doctors. They're also typically radiologists and further trained in thermography. But the arrow there, the white arrow that you see, is pointing to the vascular feed to that tumor. And you can see that it's actually draining down the sternum and under that breast.
Wow.
And it actually involved the blood vessels up in the neck near the brachial plexus area as well. So it was very far advanced. This man did not make it. He passed as well. So that's kind of it. I know you wanted to touch on radiation. Oh, here's that chart of just a good visual on where thermography stands and where mammography stands at detection. So you can see that thermography detects within the first 2 years up to 256 cells in size. And by the time a mammogram can see a tumor, you're over 4 billion cells. And again, that's because mammograms are an X-ray, which is a structural test. It is relying upon the calcification or the killing of cells for that light beam to bounce off of. And thermography does not use structure. So we are looking at the heat generated by the vascular system in this case.
Okay, so thank you. That's really great information. I appreciate that. Your contact information is on here, and I will, when I share this out on Facebook and YouTube, I'll make sure that all that information is on there as well, so that
Perfect.
people
Thank
know
you.
how to contact you about that.
Okay.
And I just had a question. What was it?
Radiation?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about radiation, because I know that I've had this discussion with people saying, you know, that's without radiation, I mean, that's really a key thing. Then I started thinking, why? What are some of why should we not have radiation? I mean, how
Right.
does it harm us, and where do we get it from?
Well, you get radiation from a variety of sources, and there's natural radiation. So we're exposed to natural radiation every single day. But there's a lot of man-made radiation as well. So medical tests account for about 40% of the radiation we receive in our lifetimes. A CAT scan is the highest dose radiation typically that you can get, depending upon where in the body. So different organs absorb different levels of radiation. Children are also much more susceptible to radiation because their bodies are smaller and they seem to absorb more. But I think that if people don't know, radiation is a known carcinogen. There's tons of research on this as well. And it causes cancer by damaging the DNA of cells or mutating them. I wanted to read a quote that I found by the World Health Organization because I think it's pretty flat on here. And it says, ionizing radiation is a complete carcinogen since it can act to initiate, promote, and progress cellular changes that lead to cancer.
Wow.
That's a pretty strong statement. So aside from medical tests, so you get radiation from x-rays, mammograms, CT scans, PET scans, fluoroscopy, which is heart-related. Nuclear testing can also, be in the mix there too. MRIs, while they don't have radiation, the contrast that's used with it is being studied now because they found in autopsied individuals that it resides in the brain matter, and they don't know for how long. So that's a whole nother thing. So that's why I don't do my MRIs anymore. But, I said there's natural sources. We have radiation in our own bodies that we give off. But there's cosmic radiation. So every time you get on an airline flight, you're getting cosmic radiation. Flight attendants and pilots are much more obviously prone to cosmic radiation. There's radon gas in people's homes. That's a natural source. Man-made would be nuclear energy plants, coal plants as well give off radiation. And then there's agricultural and industrial radiation. So this was sort of a new finding for me that radiation is used in fertilizers and on our crops and our food. Yes.
Oh my God.
It's really proliferate. It's everywhere. So, I think, when you're trying to minimize your so let me talk about why you want to minimize your radiation exposure. So every test you have, every dental x-ray, et cetera, is giving you a dose of radiation. And everywhere you go, they tell you, whether it's a mammogram or a dental x-ray, it's a low dose radiation. Well, that may be, but the point is that radiation is cumulative in your body. So every single test you have, all the natural radiation you absorb, every airline flight you take, every x-ray you go through at the airport is giving you some radiation. So it's accumulating in your body. And no one knows what the tipping point for your body will be as to when there's enough radiation accumulated in your body to cause cell damage, to cause cancer in your body. As I said, children are much more susceptible because their bodies are smaller. And kids today with sports get radiation all the time from medical imaging. So that's, in my mind, why it's a concern. And in my case, and for many people who have had radiation treatment for cancer, are at a much higher risk of secondary cancer as a result of that radiation therapy. So that's my reason for wanting to really minimize, if not eliminate, radiation from my world and my healthcare particularly. So.
Yeah, I know. I've had friends who've had radiation for, I had one recently who had a skin cancer removed, and they did radiation, and it caused all kinds of dental problems then. I mean,
Right.
it's like it's not just that thing that is affected, but it's like everything else down the line can be affected by that. So that's great information. Thank you so much. And I think it is really wise, just like we try to eliminate GMOs and all
Right.
kinds of other stuff from our diets in our world. Yeah, ditto with the radiation.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch also on dense breast tissue because I mentioned that briefly earlier. I have dense breast tissue, and 50% of women do. And that is very problematic for mammography. Now, I'm not here to bash mammography because it certainly has its place in the world as does every other test. But I think if you can take other steps to kind of reduce your exposure and potential risk for disease, then you should. Um, there's with 50% of women having dense breast tissue, there are now, I think, 36 states that require by law that there be a disclaimer on their mammography report indicating that mammography for people with dense breast tissue is not the ideal means to detect cancer.
Mm.
So if that's the case, why would they keep bringing you back for repeated mammograms if they know that there's a big chance that they're not going to see something because the dense tissue will hide that. On a mammogram, dense breast tissue looks very white, so does a tumor. So it makes it very difficult to see.
Well, and not to mention an additional dose of radiation every time you do the mammogram.
Right. And so when they say low dose, they're talking about, okay, low dose for each and every, but typically when you go for a mammogram, you have multiple images.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get called back for concerning findings,
Right.
then you're being radiated again. So again, particularly for women under 40, I don't think should be having regular mammograms unless there is a strong reason for them. And the reason that a couple of the big sources for guidelines for practitioners on what the appropriate age is for a mammogram have changed is because of what's been found in the last 10 years or so with respect to the increased risk or incidence of cancer as a result of these medical tests. And so the U.S. Preventative Task Force actually recommends mammography not start until age 50. And that is a big change from where they were, not that long ago at age 40. The American Cancer Society has changed their guidelines now to start at age 45. So every practitioner is going to follow a different guideline depending upon their preference. But, to not get political, I think that there is, there's money to be made in all of these medical tests. And I've done a blog on how practitioners today still get kickbacks, and they don't call them kickbacks, but they get financial reward for how many tests they recommend, which is not right in my mind.
I agree. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
That's great information. Again, your website is evthermography.com.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
EV is East Valley Thermography, in case somebody
Right.
doesn't remember that. evthermography.com. You've got blogs and all kinds of information, images and stuff like that, I know, on your website.
Yeah.
And people can contact you through there if you have any questions, because seriously, she could sit here and talk about this stuff for hours.
Most people that know me know I'm an introvert, but when it comes to thermography, I could talk for days. So.
You're passionate about it, and that's
yes.
what I love. That's what I love. So, and like she mentioned, this is something that you may want to do as a supplement to mammograms, or if you're, especially when you're younger, it's just thermography is a great way to go. And I know you do. When you did mine, we did an image, which was a baseline, and then it was a little while later we did a second image just to make sure that everything was kind of the same.
Right. So those two imagings 3 months apart give us your baseline breast health.
Okay.
And that's what we will go with going forward in terms of knowing seeing if there's any changes.
Okay. And so then it's like a once a year type of thing, just
Right.
look for changes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. And at this time, I believe that most insurance companies don't cover it. Some may. So you might want to check with your insurance company. But if you have like a health savings account or a flex account, you can use money from those to pay for the thermography as well. And
Correct.
I can tell you it's very affordable. And because of the early detection process of it, it's just a no-brainer in my opinion. So why would you not?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I mean, there's no pain, there's no harm to it, there's no radiation, so why would you not do something that's less invasive?
right, right. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank
I
you,
really
Kerri.
appreciate it. I think it's great information, and it's so nice to talk about something other than COVID.
I know, I agree.
It's still going rampant right now, but it's got to get our minds back on our general health too, not just that. It's like that's just kind of sucked everything up at this point.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for the little healthful diversion here. Okay, very
Well,
good.
thank you, and thank you for what you do too, Kerri. You're amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to share. Oops, what am I sharing? Window or application? Okay. Oh, crud. Okay.
You need your glasses.
I know I need my glasses. I just wanted to share my contact information here. My name is Kerri Wade. As you can see, I do integrative holistic healing with Reiki, Yoga Nidra, which is a meditation, and hypnotherapy as well, and some other things. So kerriwade.com is my website. You can also follow me on Facebook, and you can just type in @Kerri Wade Healing in your search bar on Facebook and make sure you follow. Every other Tuesday night, I am doing a free Reiki Live on Facebook. So go check that out and come join me and stop share. And I really appreciate you watching today and being here with us. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for
Thank you.
sharing this information. And I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.